The wet, cold earth was still clinging to the shovel when my sister decided to destroy my husband's memory. I was 28, standing in a black dress that felt like a second skin of grief, watching the man I loved being lowered into the ground. David was gone. And then Clara walked up, holding her 2-year-old son, and said the words that turned my mourning into a circus. "This boy is David's son, Maya. I'm claiming his inheritance." I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just looked at her and felt a strange, chilling urge to laugh, because David couldn't have children. Ever. And Clara had no idea that I knew. The silence of a cemetery is supposed to be sacred. It's a place for whispers, for the soft rustle of leaves, for the stifled sobs of people who aren't ready to say goodbye. But Clara? Clara didn't do silence. She did spectacles. She moved through the crowd of grieving relatives like she was walking a red carpet, her eyes perfectly red-rimmed, her makeup just smudged enough to look devastated. She was holding Michael. I loved that boy. I had been in the delivery room when he was born. I had paid for his first crib. I had rocked him to sleep when Clara complained she was too exhausted to be a mother. I thought I was being a good aunt. I thought I was supporting a struggling sister. But as she stood there, right at the edge of the open grave, I realized I had been funding the weapon she was now pointing at my heart. "Maya, I'm so sorry," she said, her voice loud enough to carry to David's parents, to his brothers, to everyone who was already looking for a reason to judge me. I couldn't keep this secret any longer. David would want his son to have what's rightfully his. He would want Michael to be taken care of. The crowd gasped. I saw David's mother, Martha, clutch her chest. I saw his brothers step forward, their faces a mix of confusion and protectiveness. They looked at me, waiting for me to shatter. They expected me to fall to my knees, to demand answers, to curse David's name. But all I could think about was a Tuesday night 3 years ago. David and I had been trying to conceive for a year. We had the charts, the vitamins, the scheduled intimacy that felt more like a chore than a connection. We were 25, young and supposed to be fertile, but nothing was happening. I remember the night he came home from the specialist. He didn't even take off his coat. He just sat at the kitchen table, his hands shaking, and pushed a medical file toward me. "Maya," he had whispered, his voice cracking. "It's not you, it's me. That surgery I had when I was 7, the complications were worse than my parents ever told me. I'm sterile. Completely. 0 count. There is no chance, Maya. Not now, not ever." We spent thousands on second opinions. We saw the best doctors in the country. The answer was always the same, a biological impossibility. David was heartbroken. He felt like he had failed me, like he wasn't man enough to give me the family I wanted. I spent months convincing him that I loved him, not his DNA. We decided to keep it a secret. It was his burden to carry, his pride to protect. Not even his parents knew, and yet here was Clara, standing in front of his casket, they claiming that Michael, with his dark curls and brown eyes, was the product of a year-long affair with my husband. I bit my lip so hard I tasted blood. The irony was suffocating. Clara was so confident. She had spent years watching me, studying my marriage, looking for a way to get what I had. She saw David as a provider, a stable man with a good house and a massive life insurance policy. To her, he wasn't a person. He was a retirement plan. "That's interesting, Clara," I finally said. My voice was calm, too calm. It unnerved her. She expected a victim. She got a woman holding a secret that was about to blow her world apart. "You're saying this happened while I was paying your rent? While I was taking you to your prenatal appointments because Michael's anonymous father had abandoned you?" "He wasn't anonymous, Maya." "It was David!" Clara shrieked, playing to the audience. She squeezed Michael tighter, making the poor boy whimper. "He loved us! He was going to leave you for us!" I looked at David's casket. I knew the truth. David loved me with a fierce, quiet loyalty that people like Clara can't even comprehend. He wouldn't have cheated, but more importantly, he couldn't have fathered that child. As the dirt began to fall on David's grave, I realized this was only the beginning. Clara wasn't just after money. She was trying to rewrite my history. She wanted the house we had spent 3 years renovating. She wanted the life insurance policy that was meant to keep me safe. She wanted to turn my husband into a villain and herself into a martyr. But she made one fatal mistake. She assumed I was weak because I was kind. She assumed that because I had supported her through her struggles, I would continue to enable her lies. "We'll see you in court, Clara," I said, turning my back on her. But as I walked toward my car, I felt the first real wave of fear. Clara had been preparing for this. She had documentation, she had photos, she had a story that the world, and our family, was all too eager to believe. I was 28, a widow of 3 days, and I was about to go to war against my own blood. But what I didn't know yet was that Clara hadn't just faked a story. She had spent the last 2 years manufacturing evidence so convincing that even David's own mother would turn against me. And the anonymous father of Michael? He was still out there watching from the shadows, waiting for his part in Clara's twisted game. They say blood is thicker than water, but they never tell you how easily blood can drown you. Clara didn't just decide to betray me the day David died. No, this was a masterpiece years in the making. She had been laying the bricks for my prison since we were children. I remember being 15. I was the girl with the books and the frizzy hair, and Clara was the son that everyone revolved around. One night, she told our parents I was sleeping with her boyfriend, Tommy. I hadn't even spoken to him for more than 5 minutes, but Clara cried so convincingly that my father grounded me for 2 months. She didn't do it because she loved Tommy. She did it because she couldn't stand the idea of me having a clean reputation. She needed me to be the bad sister, so she could be the golden child. Fast forward to 3 years ago. When Clara showed up on my doorstep, pregnant and crying, I thought, stupidly, that the cycle had finally broken. I thought motherhood had softened the jagged edges of her soul. "Maya, I have nobody else," she had sobbed into my shoulder. "The father, he's gone. He's a monster. Please, I just want to be a better person for this baby." David was the one who encouraged me to help her. That was the cruelest part. David, with his infinite patience, was the one who said, "Maya, she's your sister. If she's ready to change, we should be there." We opened our wallets. We opened our home. We gave her the stability she had never known. But while I was buying Michael's first onesies, Clara was busy taking photos. I didn't realize it then, but every time David helped her move a piece of furniture, or every time he dropped off groceries at her apartment because I was stuck at work, Clara was documenting it. She'd take a photo of David's car in her driveway at 9 p.m. and crop out the fact that I was in the passenger seat. She'd save a mundane text from him saying, "Got the milk, see you in 10, and rename the contact to something suggestive. She wasn't just surviving, she was curating an affair. 3 days after the funeral, Clara's lawyer, a man who looked like he'd sell his soul for a retainer, sent over the evidence. I sat in my kitchen, the same kitchen where David and I had shared our morning coffee for years, and scrolled through a digital nightmare. There were photos of them at a park. David was holding Michael, laughing. It looked like a happy family. What the photo didn't show was me, standing 5 feet away, holding the picnic basket. There were text messages, dated and timed perfectly. "I can't stop thinking about last night," one read. "I know it's wrong, but I love you," read another. My heart stopped. I knew David didn't write those. The syntax was wrong, the tone was too theatrical. But then I saw the handwritten note. "Thank you for giving me the son I always wanted. D." It was David's handwriting. My breath hitched, my vision blurred. How? How could she have his handwriting? Then I remembered. Clara had helped me organize David's home office after the accident. She had volunteered to go through his old journals and papers. She must have spent hours practicing, tracing his letters, until she could mimic his soul on paper. The trap was shut, and the world was eager to watch me suffer. My mother was the first to call. Not to ask if I was okay, but to tell me how disappointed she was in David. "Ainsley, you have to accept it," she said, her voice cold. "Clara showed me the letters. She showed me the messages. David was a good man. But men have needs, especially when they can't have. She trailed off, but I heard the unspoken words, especially when his wife couldn't give him a child. Mom, David was sterile. You know this, I whispered. No, Maya. David said he was sterile. Maybe he just didn't want to have children with you. That was the moment I felt the ground truly give way. My own mother would rather believe my husband was a manipulative liar than admit her favorite daughter was a fraud. By the end of the week, David's mother, Martha, had stopped taking my calls. His brothers, men I had considered my own siblings, and sent a formal request for me to vacate the premises so Michael could move into his father's home. I was being erased from my own life. I spent nights sitting in David's office, surrounded by the scent of his cologne that was slowly fading from the curtains. I felt like a ghost haunting my own house. I looked at the medical files, the real ones, the ones that proved Michael couldn't be his. But who would believe me? In the court of public opinion, a grieving mother with a toddler and a handwritten confession wins every time. Clara began showing up at my house unannounced. She didn't even knock anymore. She'd walk in, Michael in tow, and start measuring the windows for new curtains. You should move out by the 1st, Maya, she said, her voice devoid of any sisterly warmth. It'll be easier for everyone. If you leave quietly, I won't sue you for the backdated child support David owed me. I looked at Michael, who was playing with a toy truck on the rug David and I had bought in Vermont. He looked up at me and said, Annie? My heart shattered. He didn't know. He was a pawn in a game he didn't even know he was playing. Clara, I said, my voice shaking with a rage I hadn't known I possessed. You think you've won. You think because you've convinced a bunch of grieving people with fake texts and forged notes that reality has changed, but science doesn't care about your stories. Clara laughed. It was a sharp, ugly sound. Science? Maya, by the time a judge looks at a DNA test, I'll already be living here. Martha has already promised to pay for my legal team. The whole family is behind me. You're alone. She was right. I was alone. But being alone means you have nothing left to lose. And a woman with nothing to lose is the most dangerous person in the room. I was ready to give up. I really was. I had the packing boxes in the hallway. But then I found something. Not in a medical file, not in a text message. I found a hidden folder on David's cloud drive that he had labeled, "For my protection." David hadn't been as oblivious as I thought. He had seen Clara's performance long before the funeral. And he had left me a digital insurance policy that would turn the court hearing into a bloodbath. The air in courtroom 4B felt like it was made of lead. Monday morning in Seattle is usually gray, but today the atmosphere was suffocating. I sat at the petitioner's table, my back straight, wearing the pearls David had bought me for our 5th anniversary. Across the aisle, Clara looked like a saint in white. She had Michael in the hallway with a sitter, but she kept glancing at the door as if expecting a standing ovation for her performance as a wronged mother. My lawyer, James, leaned in. You ready for the insurance policy? I've been ready for 28 years, James, I whispered. Judge Patricia Morrison didn't waste time. She was a woman who had seen every trick in the book, every fake tear, and every forged document. She looked at Clara's lawyer, Mr. Davidson, and asked the million-dollar question. Counselor, before we review the DNA results, does your client wish to maintain her claim? Davidson looked at Clara. Clara nodded, dabbing her eyes. Yes, Your Honor, for my son's sake. Very well, the judge said, opening the sealed envelope from the medical examiner's office. The sound of the paper tearing felt like a gunshot. The results of the genetic testing are conclusive. David Thompson is excluded as the biological father of the minor child, Michael Richardson. There is a 0% probability of paternity. The courtroom went silent. You could have heard a pin drop on the marble floor. I looked at Clara. Her face didn't just go pale, it turned a sickly shade of gray. Her hand, which had been holding a tissue, froze mid-air. That's impossible, she stammered, her voice cracking. The tests. The lab must have made a mistake. David and I, we were together. I have the letters. I have the texts. The lab does not make mistakes on basic biology, Ms. Richardson. Judge Morrison said, her voice dropping to a dangerous level of coldness. But I wasn't done. I stood up. "Your Honor," I said, my voice echoing through the room. "My sister is right about one thing. There were interactions between her and my husband, but they weren't what she claimed. David knew Clara. He knew her better than any of us, and he knew that one day her obsession with what I had would lead her to do something desperate." James handed a thumb drive to the court clerk. "What is this, Mrs. Thompson?" the judge asked. "An insurance policy, Your Honor. David had a security app on his phone that auto-recorded calls from high-stress contacts. He never told me about it because he didn't want to worry me. He didn't want me to know how much my own sister was harassing him while I was at work." The clerk pressed play. The first recording was from 14 months ago. Clara's voice, sharp and predatory. "David, Maya doesn't have to know. You're successful, you're stable. Michael needs a father figure like you. If you just spend one night with me, I'll tell everyone the father was some random guy from a bar, but if you don't, I'll make sure Maya thinks you've been cheating anyway." David's voice, calm and filled with disgust. "Clara, get out of my car. I love my wife. I am sterile, you idiot. Even if I wanted to, I couldn't give you what you're looking for. Stop calling me. Stop showing up at my office. If you touch Maya's peace of mind, I will destroy you." The recording stopped. Clara was shaking now, her entire body trembling with the weight of her exposed lies. The handwritten note she had forged, the text messages she had faked, they were all incinerated in 30 seconds of David's real voice. You recorded me?" Clara shrieked, jumping to her feet. "That's illegal. That's—" "What's illegal, Ms. Richardson?" Judge Morrison thundered, slamming her gavel. "Is filing a fraudulent claim in my courtroom, committing perjury, and attempting to steal an estate through character assassination. Sit down." I watched as the bailiff stepped closer to her. The golden child was finally tarnished. My mother, sitting in the back row, looked like she had aged 20 years in a single minute. She looked at me, and her eyes filled with a shame so deep she couldn't even hold my gaze. She had chosen the liar. She had enabled the fraud. And now she had to live with the truth. The judge turned back to the bench. "I am dismissing the paternity claim with prejudice. I am also referring this case to the district attorney for a full investigation into fraud and perjury. Furthermore, Ms. Richardson, you are ordered to pay all of Mrs. Thompson's legal fees and are barred from any further contact with the estate." As we walked out of the courthouse, the reporters, the ones Clara had invited to document my downfall, swarmed her instead. "Clara, did you forge the letters? Who is the real father, Clara? How does it feel to be exposed?" I didn't stop to watch. I went home. I sat in David's office, the house finally quiet, finally mine again. And I opened the bottom drawer of his desk and found the letter I had mentioned before. I read it again, the ink slightly smeared by my tears. "Maya, if you're reading this, it means the truth had to come out. I'm sorry I couldn't be there to hold your hand through the storm. But remember, the truth doesn't need a loud voice to be heard. It just needs to exist. You are free now. Go live the life we dreamed of. I'll be watching. D." I realized then that David hadn't just protected my money or my house. He had protected my soul. He knew that if I had discovered Clara's betrayal without proof, I would have spent the rest of my life doubting myself, doubting our love, doubting my own reality. He gave me the one thing Clara could never steal: certainty. A week later, my mother showed up at my door. She didn't have a casserole this time. She just had a look of brokenness. "Maya, I didn't know." "You did know, Mom," I said, standing in the doorway of the house Clara tried to take. "You knew who Clara was. You just preferred her drama to my truth because her drama made you feel needed. My truth just made you feel responsible." I didn't let her in. Not that day. Maybe not for a long time. I started a foundation in David's name, a scholarship for kids who wanted to study architecture, his passion. I sold the house. It was a beautiful house, but it was filled with the ghosts of a war I was tired of fighting. I moved to a small cottage by the coast, took Michael's college fund, which was still in my name, and converted it into a trust for him that Clara couldn't touch. Because despite everything, I still loved that boy. He wasn't David's son, but he was an innocent caught in a web of lies. When he grows up, he'll have the money for school, and he'll have a letter from me telling him that even though his mother lied, he was always loved by the man he called Uncle David. As for Clara, she avoided jail through a plea deal, but her reputation was gone. She moved to another state, still chasing a life she didn't earn, still playing the victim in a story where she was the only villain. I'm 28 now. I'm a widow, a survivor, and finally, a woman who knows her own worth. I look at the ocean every morning and I feel David in the wind. The truth always wins. It just sometimes takes a little longer than we'd like. If this story reminded you that the truth is worth fighting for, hit that like button. Have you ever had a family member try to rewrite your history? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories of justice and survival. This is Maya signing off.